Hi everyone, this is a very brief video on an introduction to SAP Business One Query Generator. It is designed to rehash or recover the ground that we went through on a recent training session. So I have my SAP Business One database open here, and if I just go into Query Generator, and let's say I want to look at some information about business partners. Well, the first thing I need to know is what table does business partner data live on. If I go to my business partners and just turn on business partner master data, and if I check to ensure that I have the option system information turned on, which is just here under view, when I hover on a field in the business partner master data at the bottom of the screen, just in this section down here, if you keep an eye on it, you will see that it comes up with OCRD card name. And equally, if I click on the field above, it says OCRD card code, with the field beneath OCRD card F name, and so on. So by just bringing up a business partner here, I can see that confirms that continues to be the case. So now I know that I'm looking for data on the table OCRD. I can simply type that in, call up my card code, and I'm going to also include the card type. Listing that, I can then see that I have all my business partners, and that includes both customers and suppliers, and if there were any leads on this database, they'd also be here. To isolate this to only look at customers, I can simply say where the card type is equal to C. And we execute again, and now we're just looking at customers. If we go further, we can then sort by the card code. So this sorts the card code in ascending order. To sort in descending order, we just put in the letters D, E, S, C. And execute. So that got us to a point where we understood what's being filled in the first four sections here. We select specific or specified fields from specified tables where certain conditions are met, and we can sort or order that information based on particular fields, and we can choose whether descending or ascending order. To get a group by in there, we have to go and look at something which allows us to subtotal the information in some way. So for example, if I were to come back here and say that I wanted to count the business partners, so we'll actually just count the number of customers and suppliers. So if we do that and we put in the word count around the card code, now if I do it nothing else and click execute, I get an error message telling me that it can't bring back the information because the field card type has not been contained within an aggregate function or a group by clause. So basically what it's telling me is that card type, we haven't tried summing it or subtotaling it or counting it, so I either have to take it out of the report or I have to include it in the group by section down here. So if we just include it in the group by and we execute on that, and we have to take out the sort by here as well. We then get two records back, or two records in the report. Basically, it tells us there are 6,254 customers and 1,198 suppliers on this database. So that's using the group by clause. From that, then we went and we did actually some specific queries that users wanted to look at. The first thing that we wanted to look at was a list of suppliers with whom we have not had purchase invoices in the past 3 years. So there's a number of ways we could look at this. The way we chose on the day was we went to, first of all, run a list of all purchase invoices on the system. So we got OPCH, which is the purchase invoices table, and we just specified, let's look for the card code. And that would give us a list of the card code or supplier code on each invoice on the system. That, of course, means that we get the same supplier many times. So if we were to put distinct in here, we could isolate that to only looking at each supplier once. That's each supplier just listed once. Alternative to that, if we wanted, we could say give me the card code and then give me the invoice number. But rather than listing each invoice number, we'll just count the number of different invoices. And again, once we tell the system that we're counting this field, it means we have to then group by this field. Otherwise, we're not going to get any information back. So if we do that, then we get each supplier listed once and the number of invoices that we've had with him. Now that's not what we were looking for though. We were looking for the last invoice date, or rather a list of suppliers with whom we've only had an invoice prior to 3 years ago. So if I were just to come back here and specify that I wanted to get a max excuse me, on a field, and in this case it's not the document number that I want a maximum on, it's the document date. So we look for the maximum document date, and again I just have to take out these commas. So max doc date, and we call that field as last invoice date. And we're grouping by the card code. We can then see the last invoice date for each supplier on the system. From that, if we wanted to, we could actually just filter, and then we could get a list of the last invoice date where, for example, it's smaller than today, which is the 25th of June, today, and 3 years ago, which is 2018 minus 3, 2015. We filter that, and that would give us our list of suppliers whose last invoice was prior to the 25th of June 2015. And that's bringing us right up to where we expect to be. So that's a number of different ways that we could actually get this. On the day, excuse me, the route that we chose was we actually just asked for a list of business partners, and we said distinct. So distinct card code from OPCH, and what we could do is then say where the date on those invoices, and we were saying in this case where it's greater than or equal to today, which is just get date, and then we're going backwards from that 1,095 days, which essentially is 365 multiplied by 3 gives us 1,095, and then if we just add on 1 day for leap years, then we execute that, and that's a list of the suppliers with whom we have had invoices within the past 3 years. Now if I copy that information for a moment, and if I open up a new query, and then if I look for a list of business partners again, this time we just call up all business partners, and this time I'm going to say where the card type is equal to S, so I'm looking only for suppliers, and then I say and where the business partners card code is not in the following list, and then we just paste our previous query in there. So that's this query back here essentially. We're pasting that in here, we're putting it in between two brackets. So bracket at the beginning, bracket at the end, and this becomes a subquery within our main query. So this is a list of all the suppliers with whom we have had a purchase invoice within the past 3 years, and then we're saying we don't want any of those, are just not in, and we execute on that, and that's a list of suppliers with whom we haven't had no purchase invoices in the last 3 years. That's all fine. Of course, we may have brand new suppliers in there in that list inadvertently as well, so it might be an idea to take another look at how we might go about getting this information from the system. So if I just actually start again, if I say OCRD and I'm looking at business partners, and in this instance then I'm going to actually connect that to OPCH, and from there if I actually put in a max doc date, as the last invoice date, and then I might put in some other fields as well. So for example, if I do that, now as things stand, this is using an inner join between OCRD and OPCH. So when we do that, and of course we need to put in commas there, and we need to group this by the card code. So that's giving us more or less the same as what we had a moment ago. But that is only giving us the suppliers with whom we have had purchase invoices. What about those where there have been no purchase invoices? Well, they're not going to be listed at all. If I change this to being a left join, in other words, if I say that I know there is data in this field, which is the card code on the OCRD, there may or may not be data in the card code on OPCH. In other words, the supplier exists, but there may or may not be purchase invoices on that supplier account. So by making it a left join, I'm going to get all my suppliers, but I'm only getting a count on those suppliers where there have been purchase invoices. So then when I execute, I get several accounts where there are blanks because there is no last invoice date on those suppliers. And for that, then I might also want to include something like perhaps a create date, which tells me the day upon which the date on which the supplier account was created. So we just come back up here and we say when was the account created, and we scroll down to find that field. So there's create date. We execute on that, and again, of course, we have to include that field in our group by clause now that we have one. So now we have the date upon which the suppliers were created, and we're not isolating there, of course, for only suppliers. We have customers in there as well, so we need to also include and where the card type is equal to S. So there we go, that's only suppliers, and it shows us the date on which the supplier account was created and the last invoice date that we've had from them. Okay, so that's quite useful, but what about new supplier accounts? So we may have had suppliers here, we've had no invoices from them so far, but maybe we still have purchase orders outstanding against them. So the next thing I would consider looking at is a list of, or a count of the number of outstanding purchase orders or open purchase orders that we have against each of these suppliers. So you might think that the easy way to go about this would be to put OPOR into the report. It might work, but it's going to run into problems very quickly. So what I would suggest is if we start by looking at a OPOR in isolation, just take the purchase orders table, and we look for our card code, and we will do a count on the number of purchase orders for each supplier on the system. So to get the open purchase orders only, we'll look for purchase orders which are not cancelled, in other words where the cancel flag is set to no, and the document status is equal to open, which is O. And then because we have a count in here, we need to group by any other field that's listed in the select part of the statement. So that's basically that field there, the group, the supplier code. And that gives us a list of open purchase orders by supplier. So if we look at this for a supplier, for example, just go with these guys, we will find if we drill in on their purchase orders, we have indeed 20 purchase orders outstanding against them. So now we have a query that's giving us useful information in that regard. We will just get that whole query, just going to copy that, and I'm going to take you into something that's very much a day 2 exercise, but might be helpful to be aware of it and just to see how it works. What I can do here is I can come into the left join into the section of the report which is looking for the tables. And in this instance, I'm not actually creating a table, I'm doing a subquery. So that's the subquery we just wrote a moment ago about purchase orders. And we call that T10 just for the sake of argument. And then on T10, we're going to do a join between OCRD, which is T0. And we're looking for the card code to be equal to T10's card code. So in here we have card code again, you'll see, but it's on, in that instance, it's on OPOR here. Okay, so we do that, and then we have a field which we have called open purchase order. So we'll copy that. And we will put that in here as T10 open purchase order and a comma. Actually, I'll tell you what, we'll just put it in after the last field that we had there. So we'll just cut that and put in